for anything that they can get. And sometimes they work out and they pick up a kill or two, but they definitely don't seem like the kind of team to want to take it slow if things start going well. So I feel like we might be in store for another explosive early game, either in their favor or not.
Curious to see, of course, Olaf taking on the table, Ryze, Caitlyn, bans are remaining relatively consistent, Nidalee as well. Syndra up and available. RNG, I think we might be able to expect them to ban it here, but they do have the luxury of blue side first pick. What do you think is the thought coming into this pick ban phase? What do you think needs to change?
Well, I definitely don't want to actually see them ban Elise anymore. I think that Blank and Bengi aren't actually very phenomenal Elise players. I think that is extremely problematic, though, when you are blue side and having to ban Syndra.
Interestingly enough, it was banned against RNG a ton. It feels like a champion that xiohu was comfortable on and has been in the past. Why do you think that they are not willing to potentially trade this for something else in first rotation?
It feels like they're, all series long, they've been kind of shying away from these like xiohu playmaking champions. He's a lot of the time on like more stable picks, and so I think this might be a conscious strategy where they're going to not play around mid lane. Maybe they're scared of Faker in general. His outplay potential we know is extremely high, so they could just be looking to focus more resources on the bot lane, whereas with Syndra, you don't need to play around her, but she's best used to snowball around the mid lane, so maybe they're just trying to avoid something like that.
Curious to see, of course, RNG really taking their time on this first pick, and they are going to opt to pick up the first pick, Kennen. Now, we have seen first rotation Jace, but we don't see quite as much priority on the top lane thus far in the quarterfinal stage, in the bracket stage. What do you think is the thought process behind RNG picking up the Kennen here? Does it, I mean, it has weak matchups, right? Like, why are you first picking top lane on the side of RNG?
It doesn't have a ton of weak matchups, especially with the Jace banned. So I think they just want to keep that off Duke, who's extremely powerful on that champion. We saw that the SKT used it in Game 2 to run that kind of poke comp. So maybe they're going to go for a similar thing, or they want to avoid SKT going for a similar thing where they can use the Kennen almost like a frontliner zone control as a mage damage threat as well. So I think maybe they're just trying to keep that threat away from SKT.
Curious too, as SKT's first rotation comes in, picking up the Jhin and the Elise. Now, we talked about Blank and Bengi not being the most proficient Elise players, but let's talk a little bit about the Elise-Lee Sin matchup, as RNG have now finished their rotation. Who has the edge here, and what is the goal when you're picking this Elise up compared to your goal as Lee Sin?
I mean, if Lee Sin can get a jump onto Elise when she's unsuspecting, then it's going to be advantageous for Lee Sin. Other than that, though, Elise should have her way with Lee Sin, except once he does hit 6, obviously he's going to be a little bit more impactful. He does have a little bit more mobility early on, but Elise is almost always going to have superior counter ganks than match ganks.
So talking about the superior kind of early game ganks, superior, maybe more opportunities for Blank to find those early game ganks, do you feel like this game is going to be all about the early game as the last few games have been as well? Is it pretty much going to be another one of those games where we wait for one mistake, one error from either side before we see the game just snowball out of control?
I mean, it seems like RNG has tried to force big plays early on every single game and has not had the best success with it. So maybe they try and go the complete other way and slow it down, but that's not what I think their style is. I think they want to really look for some early game stuff. And as they lock in the Aurelion Sol, I think that's pushing more towards that idea. They're just looking to get some control around mid lane, push it out, and then go roaming, teaming up the Aurelion Sol with the Lee Sin and getting a gank somewhere. So they don't have the best setup in some of their side lanes.
Now, earlier in the series, we talked about SKT potentially having a counter pick up and available for the Aurelion Sol. I guess we're going to see firsthand if they want to use it here. LS, you said if they have any special picks, they need to put it all on the table.
TF?
It looks like...
No, not Malazahar.
You want to see the TF?
I want to see the TF, and we all know that Faker can play TF.
So I think we've talked about this before on stream, but for our newer viewers, why don't you explain how that matchup plays out? Malazahar is locked in, but I think the TF versus Aurelion Sol matchup is a really interesting matchup, theoretically.
I know mlxg, who was just on the stream previously, thought in his perspective that Malazahar does okay into Aurelion, and I agree that he does do it once he's at level 6. However, pre-level 6, from my point of view, Aurelion Sol versus Malazahar is one of the hardest counters in the entire game, and definitely in this meta, because it's basically like SK Telecom is playing a 4 versus 5. Malazahar can't respond to the lane shoving that Aurelion Sol offers. He can't really reciprocate any sort of damage early on because he doesn't have enough points in W or E. and the silence is just negligible at rank 1.
Of course, going to have to see how that matchup plays out. Remember, you can hit us up with your questions at LOL Esports on Twitter using the hashtag AskTheCasters. We'll answer some of those during the games moving forward. But Mark, you were just about to say.
Oh, I was going to say, touching off what Ellis was saying about the fact that Malazahar doesn't really keep up with Aurelion Sol's early game, what's scary is that both their side laners are like aggressive laners that need to trade to be able to come out ahead. You can't play Aurelia defensively really against a Kennen because you just get shoved in, pushed under turret, and harassed. You need to be willing to go in and fight. And if you have to worry about Aurelion Sol roams, it's really hard to play that way. And bot lane's a similar way where Zyra and Jhin are looking to trade heavily. So it's a little scary that they have two side laners that are so aggressive with a mid lane that loves to roam.
Yeah, and going off what he's saying, it's also a red side Aurelia, which gives a lot more room to the Elise and the Aurelion Sol to really dive the Aurelia underneath the turret. That being said, it is a double magic damage composition in top and mid lane, so Aurelia does have the ability to actually go Wit's End, which would help a lot in early sort of dive shenanigans from that combo.
The nice thing, though, is at least they have the Elise in for some magic damage. If you're bringing the Elise in there as well, then the magic resist gets so effective. So
for some physical damage.
Right, I'm saying if they didn't have Elise in and had a magic damage threat, it'd be too good for Aurelia. So that's a bright side for RNG, that they have a little bit of damage split between the jungler and the top and mid.
So curious now, do we just expect there to be a perpetual 2v2 on the top side? With Aurelia, we kind of expect to play so aggressive into this Kennen matchup. Should we just expect all the attention to be on the top side, or can we even say that now that we're seeing this same bottom lane matchup we've seen all series? This time, of course, hopefully, this time probably win speakers for Mata again, but actually correctly win speakers.
I don't know, because RNG loves to play aggressive bottom. So if you are RNG and you're saying like, oh yeah, play safe bottom, which Karma Ezreal can kind of do. They can play a little bit more defensively, but that's not really the player's play style. So I don't know if they'll be able to sit back and say, yeah, we're gonna play around top side for Looper.
As we watch this unfold, you can see this is, of course, the RNG Fog of War perspective, a little early vision placed down to figure out the jungle pathing in the camps. mlxg and Looper look like they want to set up a little bit of cheese here. Do you think they're going to go for actual early trades here?
They might. I mean, given that SK Telecom has already seemingly backed off, I think that they have... Oh, they don't have it warded.
Oh, no.
This can get really ugly.
Oh, he missed the
that's bad.
Oh, you want to talk about
the Krubs are going to reset. The Krubs are going to reset.
There's not going to be anything they can really get off
Don't push that button, mlxg.
No, he's just going to have to go back into his own jungle. Just slows both junglers down, really, and there's not much they can get out of it.
Well, Elise actually benefits from this the most because Elise is able to tank camps via the Spiderlings, whereas Elise is going to be completely solo on everything that's going on.
And already we're seeing a lot of aggression down on the bottom side. It looks like it may be RNG favored. It's hard for me to read. mlxg going to clear again. I'm just curious, after a play like that, what is the next step now for SKT? If Elise does in fact have the advantage, do they just now know that they can get the early ganks that much faster?
It's more like you know that Lee Sin's going to be pretty low after his clear, so it's harder for him to aggress. So you can play a little bit more aggressive as the Elise now, because like Ellis was saying, you don't have the leash on the clear, and because Elise at least has her Spiderlings, she can clear a little higher HP and should be okay.
Of course, you can see xiohu starting to push in. This is as predicted for the early laning matchup. Just not a whole lot that Malazahar can do. We'll see how that turns as Faker starts to move towards level 6, as he gets more points in the Malefic Vision. But honestly, just feels like all-out aggression in every single lane. xiohu even now warding down, and they will spot the Elise out.
Yeah, and now they know exactly where Blank's going to be for the foreseeable future. And this is basically what I was talking about as we saw early on. Faker fell down quite considerable amount in CS, and yeah, an exhaust came out. A little bit premature.
Looper taking a lot of damage here. Stun comes out, and that's a lot of creep aggro onto Duke, but it looks like he still comes out even in the trade overall.
Yeah, but a huge minion wave. It's going to be hard for Duke to trade onto him again. And ooh, we see an all-in on the bot side.
You are a little behind there, my friend, or a little ahead, rather. Now comes the all-in, and now the prophetic eyes of MarkZ reveal first blood on the side of Uzi.
Definitely wasn't just watching the other monitor. I'll slow this one down. Put me a little bit back. But yeah, that's huge for their bot lane. I mean, we had seen the Jhin and Zyra generally ahead in this matchup, aside for that last game where they had some failed forced plays, and the fact that they're able to get that 2v2 first blood is huge for them.
Yeah, of course, keep in mind if you are watching this, both monitors are in Fog of War, so MarkZ did have the luxury of a few second lead there. And as we watch this 2v2 trade go down, we do not have any extra information. We're not cheating. We want to enjoy the Fog of War experience just as much as you guys can. Really try to figure out how RNG are making decisions and where exactly they're going to go next. But first blood now for the bottom lane. This is the start that RNG needed. What is the next step, however, to make sure that they can close it out as cleanly as SKT have been able to?
Well, hold that thought for a second, as blank is top lane. What's going to happen right now, though, is that Duke's wave is going to crash into Looper's turret. And the problem for this is that Duke's recall was not the best, and he doesn't have teleport any longer. And now mlxg's route is going to be left-centric in terms of river. And that's going to play directly into xiohu. So now they can look to actually make plays against top lane, and xiohu might be close to level 6.
Yeah, I mean, what's scary on the side of SKT is they basically have to guess where RNG can go because Wolf has no summoners bottom. They can also go bottom, but they have a wave going in top, which is scary, and they're also down some summoners in bottom. Though, I guess the summoners are actually even between the two.
Oh, Baker getting aggressive here does throw down the damage, knowing that he has the creep wave to back him up. Just a little bit of poke traded down, however. Now we don't know where Faker is going to go. We have no idea what SKT's next plan is, but it looks like he's going to walk right back into mid.
Yeah, level 5 Malazahar, not the greatest roam threat, but you have to be aware of it.
Oh, stun going to come in. Faker taking decent damage. Does input buffer the Q, it looks like. Or no, still has the stun resistance up.
He's almost level 6, and xiohu is taking an uncharacteristic amount of damage, actually, from those Voidlings. That was a pretty bad mistake, but he is ahead quite a lot in CS, and then there's also the Voidlings that he's killed inside of that, so the gold lead is quite big in mid.
Voidlings giving a decent amount of gold, of course, have to be careful to give all of those over. Don't make the trades favorable in terms of the health advantage, but could make a trade with gold. Looper, what is going on across the map? Wolf is going to go pop, and RNG are going to take advantage of the roaming Aurelion Sol, while we see just ults traded on the top side. This is an interesting game, gentlemen. Let's talk about Looper's thought process on the top side. What exactly was happening there?
I mean,
yeah, you
I
take it.
I was gonna say that's basically just an all-in. He was able to get the stun on Aurelia, keep fighting her. I think the way Looper wants to play is just keep being really aggressive on the Aurelia and keep fighting. There's no big reason not to, and because this team has this pressure advantage in the mid lane that can go roaming, we see that there. He chose to go bottom, but he can easily go topside as well and start getting fights off like that. So I like the idea of the Kennen always playing aggressive and always looking to get him low, because then you don't have as big of a tell when the Aurelion Sol is coming.
Yep.
Now, throughout the series, we've seen the team with the early gold lead just take the win in the end. Do you think SKT has viable ways back into this game now? Or, just as a prediction, do you guys think that RNG should be able to push this to Game 5?
Well, SK Telecom's team composition, if it does reach 40 minutes, it's a pretty big nightmare for RNG to actually find a way to win the game, because it's going to be heavily reliant on flank teleport wards for Looper. Given that SK Telecom is going to have immunity to Elder Drake and Baron via the 30% cooldown reduction Malazahar, so the Voidlings never die. The Jhin ultimate is way too problematic for RNG's team comp to really deal with if Kennen doesn't have flash or something. So there's definitely ways back into the game. They're not completely out of it yet, but the pressure is on.
And since we are seeing the game from RNG's perspective, what do you think is the move that makes the most sense for them now that they have decent leads in some of these lanes?
Well, I think it's really about getting the shove on Aurelion Sol and seeing what he can get done, because you can go either place. The idea of going bottom is always a little bit more favored just because there's more objectives on that side, as we see some really heavy trading by them.
Oh, curtain call. I don't think he can afford to block them all. Fourth shot. Heal traded effectively for that fourth shot, but a lot of aggression on the bottom side, and Bang and Wolf, despite their early disadvantage, still seem to be playing this one just fine.
Yeah, it's really scary on the side of RNG, the fact that they picked up 2 kills and the trades are still seemingly in the favor of Zyra and Jhin at level 6. So it seems like maybe those early kills were not effective in generating like a pressure advantage for them.
xiohu
now going in. Baker has the passive now. Pop, Voice of Light used, and he's just going to flash out. Doesn't want to take any risks there.
Definitely a good decision there. And touching on what Mark just said about the bottom lane, Jhin versus Ezreal, if Ezreal can manage to get like 2 kills and like a 10 or a 15 CS advantage, then Ezreal has a slight lead in the lane. But if he gets the advantages that he just currently has, I think it actually just makes the lane even. That's primarily how Jhin versus Ezreal goes in the bottom lane. Obviously, the Zyra and the Karma components are pretty important as well, but I don't think the advantages that they did secure was enough to really make it so that you could just expect Uzi and Mata to bulldoze through.
Now, is this just a product of Ezreal being forced into the tier itemization route, or is this just a difference in the champions?
It's mostly due to base scaling, the kits, and the way that they itemize.
So why don't we run into that a little bit? Is it just that Jhin has more raw power in his kit in the early to mid game? And if so, like, how does Ezreal ever win this lane in terms of trading?
Well, he wins it in the mid game. The tier is definitely compromising to his damage stats. So, like, even though he gets the kills, he does get the tier, and obviously Uzi is a big fan of just rushing straight into the Monomune. But the way that the trades take place early on is just perfect for Jhin's passive, the 4-hit, because generally trades are pretty light or they're jungler dependent.
Flash coming out from Looper there. Makes a lot of sense, of course. Kind of get to fight a little less frequently, a little less opportunities to all in, where those 4 shots may sort of count against Jhin. Now he is working towards the Youmu's, as you mentioned. Manamune, instant buy coming up here for Uzi, but so far, nothing too crazy happening. However, small advantages going down onto the top side as the Flash is burned, and Looper will be forced to TP back to lane. But MLXG is here. Do you think we still have an Elise on the top side? I think we might see the repeat gank.
You kind of just need to babysit it a little bit. If the Elise is there, it is a big dive threat. So you just help cover while he collects the wave. Your blue buff spawning now as well, due to like the offset timing that Lee Sin took the blue. So it's not like too bad for Lee Sin to be up there, but he definitely wants to be up there to babysit the dive as well as hand that blue off.
And now with Lee Sin topside, of course, the bottom lane, as we mentioned, still pretty Jhin favored. So I mean, it looks like Mata and Uzi are already playing aggressive, already pushing forward. Is this something that they can really afford to do now?
Yeah, because they saw the Elise topside, but the other team didn't see the Lee Sin until just recently. So RNG can afford to play more aggressive than SKT can, because SKT doesn't know Lee Sin, but RNG knows where Elise is.
And of course, they now know that Elise is on the bottom side as well, so maybe looking to back off. Playing, of course, knows he has been spotted out, so a little additional information. Mata considers the roam up, but we've seen what happens when you roam up to contest the Scuttle Crab. It wasn't good. Game 2.
Yeah, there were problems with that play. I'll leave it at that.
We've talked about them almost excessively, I would say, off air, and you guys have seen them, of course. Small mistakes lead to big problems in early game decision making.
So Aurelion Sol is looking to maybe dive on this big wave that Looper's pushing in, but doesn't look like there's anything to get off it. We don't know where Duke is, but seemingly he reset prior and is doing something else.
And nothing really going to happen there. And, you know, honestly, this game, MLXG's rooting, from my point of view, has been actually pretty lackluster. I don't think that he has synergized nearly as well with xiohu on that Aurelion Sol as much as he could have. I feel like there was a lot more openings that could have been created up in top lane.
And additionally, of course, Faker did burn the Flash there and all the summoners and has not been capitalizing any repeat ganks. xiohu does push in, though. See, maybe going for something aggressive here. Are they going to get anything else? No stars. Is going to get ulted up under tower. That is a massive mistake. Kennen goes in trying to get something else. This looks disastrous. They're going to kick Faker out, but that is still just the 2-for-1. MLXG now running for his life. This is bad news for RNG. Blank. Going to resist the temptation to go in, I suppose.
I just don't like that decision at all. That's the decision to go in and try and...
Oh my
God.
That is, exhaust is not enough, my friend. That is...
He was just trying to soften the blow. That's all that was happening.
I mean, at this point, we have to help. Have to hope it helps soften the emotional blow, because it definitely didn't help with the physical one.
Yeah, I don't like the decision to gank the Aurelion Sol lane. It's so forced. It just gets countered so easily by the Elise, which is what LS was talking about, the fact that Elise does have such strong counter gank potential. And on the same time, the bot lane just losing 2v2 straight up over and over.
Yep. And now that Jhin has this lead, it's pretty difficult for Ezreal to get any sort of salvage off, actually, at least until Ezreal gets to 2 items. It's going to be interesting to see what Bang goes for his second item on Jhin. But honestly, at this point in the game, I feel like Aurelion hasn't done what he should have been doing, and thus I think he's pretty far behind, actually, compared to Malazahar. I don't like Duke's itemization, though, the Hex Drinker. I think that the Wit's End would have been the optimal build.
Obviously not the most common item in terms of top lane Aurelia. So why don't you explain that one? Why Wit's End over the Hex Trigger here?
Well, the Wit's End gives you the flat magic resistance and then the ability to steal 25 magic resistance, which against a team composition that's not going to build a lot of magic resistance, that's pretty powerful. It also gives you attack speed, which plays into Aurelia's E10 style, so it's basically enhanced true damage as well.
Oh, Victor maybe going to get in trouble here, but oh no, there's so much damage. Is he actually going to be able to turn it? He's just continuously CC. The stars won't come out. Stars not aligned for RNG either, it looks like. They are maybe looking to make an aggressive move here on the top side. Oh, that's 2v2 though. Looper still burns the ult. Duke potentially in trouble, but I think Looper's going to drop first.
God,
maybe.
Good kick.
Oh, are they going to be able to turn it? Are they going to be able to get it back? Damn, that's an outplay. RNG show up on top side.
They needed to win that, because if that goes the other way, it is a disaster. Aurelia can start taking over the lane. The fact that they win that 2v2 is so big.
This was so unfortunate. Blank was here, but it was a proactive game. It was like weird. The trade ends up happening, and they don't focus Looper down quick enough, and they both actually had flash. So they were just being a little bit greedy there, and now this is disastrous for SKT.
The fact that that took place just on the outside range of the turret actually avoided a lot of damage, because if SKT maybe are a little more patient, they can wait for that dive to be happening under the turret and force the enemy team to soak a lot more damage. But there was a couple times where like Looper was just out of turret range and then mlxg was just out of turret range. It was so close to swinging that in the other direction.
I'm still stunned. That was the highlight moment that you wait for as the jungle Lee Sin, and I think he gets it there. Of course, that is going to start to put things back into the favor of RNG. They still have the lead. Bot lane, though, still looks very grim, especially with the Yo moves now finished up, but it doesn't look like RNG are quite out of this one yet. However, I do want to take a chance as we see SKT start to close out the vision here on the bottom side. Kai Bray asks, what do you think of comps that are loaded with kits for one function over weaker comps with multiple functions? And we'll hold that thought. SKT are diving the bottom side, and Uzi very much in trouble. Double kill as the creeps are just going to take that one down.
They're not going to be able to take down Blank
no,
here.
okay,
dead. xiohu.
All right. Oh,
he is
his body's telling him no.
Oh, Looper.
Oh man, RNG is just going in one at a time and not actually being able to kill anybody, and this is going to be a full ace. Oh, mlxg is able to get out.
mlxg with a fancy feed, but unfortunately not quite having the timing on the Sonic Wave to follow up that potential kill onto Jhin, and now has to run for his life here. Don't think there's any room for the potential outplay. Nope, does get shut down, but I want to hit back on that Twitter question. Kai Bray, I'll leave this one to you guys to interpret here. What do you think of comps that are loaded with kits for one function over weaker comps with multiple functions?
I think you got.
No, okay. Well, I was going to say, I personally don't like it. The place you see it the most is like with a poke comp, where they just keep taking more poke things, and it doesn't actually let their comp function in any other way. So like, I don't personally like it when I see Jace, Varus, Nidalee, Caitlyn, Nami. Like that to me is not a good comp, because it's like you can poke, but what else can you do, right? You don't have like real engaged threat. You don't have pick off potential. You just have a ton of poke. So for me, I like when they're a little bit more well-rounded, and that's my take on it.
Yeah, that's actually something I talked about a little bit during the casts, is that generally the Korean drafts tend to be flexible and gears that they can turn on and off. One of the things though that I will say about one-dimensional team compositions like the all-in poke or the all-in dive, etc., is that if you are very adept at playing them and your opponents have a weakness against that particular team composition, then it can be enhanced. It can sort of exacerbate any sort of problems that they might have against you. But other than that, I really don't like one-dimensional team comps.
All right, good to have that come in. Glad you guys interpreted it that way. I was like, I think that's what he means.
But yeah, I think so as well. In this game, I think the Aurelion Sol has not done nearly enough to impact the game. He keeps getting into these like random 1v1 fights mid, as opposed to trying to go and impact the rest of the map. To go down with so much trading going on bottom, if they ever could have just paired up the jungler mid and got down there early and won those fights, I think they could have been really big for them.
Duke trying to make his way out, though, and it looks like RNG continuing to pay attention to the top side, but SKT are on the way. You can't see much through the fog of war, but glimpses of champion portraits. Suddenly a Nidalee in the lane, a Malazahar as well. If anyone tanks a Cocoon, they are set to fall, and it looks like Looper is the target. No, mlxg trying to double down on that advantage. xiohu throws in the stars, throws in the galaxy. Not going to be enough.
Now Wolf is here, and I feel like RNG's is actually completely falling apart, and it's also very, very problematic that 3 of their kills is on mlxg, who his itemization is also very peculiar. I mentioned earlier how it was very likely that RNG wouldn't get magic resistance, and I feel like he's getting the Hex Drinker because he's the one that has to go in to make the insect play onto one of the members of SK Telecom, and then he just suspects that Faker maybe locks him down. But I don't think that's really a reason to get that item. I would rather just see you get a defensive magic resist item.
And this looks pretty grim. We talk about wanting to see more from the Aurelion Sol. Let's talk, like, what is the ideal Aurelion Sol game? I want to touch on that since it appears we're going to have a little bit of time before RNG can make any more proactive moves.
Well, I don't think that he rode Faker enough in CS, and then I think he also made the champion look pretty fair. So, I mean, this performance, he was way too conservative during the laning phase, and I don't think that he synergized nearly as well with mlxg as he could have. And part of that isn't maybe his fault, but also the routes that mlxg chose to take on Lee Sin. But when you pick Aurelion Sol, he's sort of like the Neo Evelyn from like Season 3 or something, where he needs to roam and get ahead, and a lot of his strengths come from getting ahead and abusing that mobility and making the enemy team play a 4 versus 5. And when you pick it into Malazahar, it's more like a 4v7 or something, just because of how oppressive he is in the earlier stages and how Malazahar just can do absolutely nothing. And he did create advantages early on, but then nothing happened after that, and it's just so bizarre to see.
Yeah, so like a good example of what he could have done was there's a point that 2v2 that happened topside should have actually been a 3v2, but Aurelion Sol stayed mid and started trying to just 1v1 Faker, and then Wolf comes to collapse, and then they disengage and nothing happens mid. I don't know why you opt for that play instead of just shoving that lane and heading top to meet up with the Lee Sin and the Kennen who are about to dive the Irelia, and you get this really risky 2v2 instead of a well-coordinated team play with a 3v2 dive on the top side. It was plays like that that they opted for, like xiohu is opting for a lot of fights mid instead of getting out of the lane. And I think what, just what Ellis was saying, what makes him so good is the early roaming plays that he can make. And he made a couple, but you need to keep that pressure up nonstop.
Now, of course, as the pressure has fallen away from the side of RNG, we can see Baron completely unwarded, pings dropping down, and SKT have spotted mlxg out. Elise getting kicked away, and mlxg now set to fall. SKT probably going straight to the Baron now. What do you do in this situation as RNG? What are your options?
I mean, just look at their map. I mean, we're watching from their vision. What do they see on the top side of the map? They see absolutely nothing up there. If they're going for Baron, you're just going to be face checking. If they're not doing Baron, you get this, maybe pickoffs. Has to use his QSS to get out.
Not all what he wanted. Of course, Faker getting aggressive too. Aurelia's on the bottom side. We can be reasonably sure that Zyra, Jhin aren't two-manning it. I hope. That's not possible, right, analysts?
Well, actually,
not at this point.
Malazahar at least could two-man the Baron, given that Malazahar has the 30% CDR. I believe he has 30% CDR. I don't know if Faker's actually running these CDR runes.
We talked a little bit earlier about Faker's creative rune choices, so we'll have to see. But there goes Mata, and Mata looks set to fall. xiohu's now on the outside. Bye-bye, my friend. And SKT not going to be able to catch the Star Dragon, but they may be able to catch Uzi. Aurelia leaping in over the wall, going to hop that, chaining it together. Nice use of that Sheen proc there. Locked up, not going to get stunned out. Kicked out once again. mlxg makes the hero play, and surprise from the backside as Faker drops.
I'm getting a little sloppy on the side of SKT here. They turn off the Baron, trying to get some kills after forcing RNG to face check, and then they just split up all over the place and actually give one kill back.
Uh-oh, xiohu. Every time I see someone get hit by a Zyra snare, I'm convinced that they are dead. But Hooper now getting a stun on the Wolf. Protobelts to safety. Blank goes in. This is really messy
Chinese
fighting.
League of Legends. They love just running up and down the map fighting nonstop, and they're kind of sucking SKT into that play style, which is, as we saw in Game 2, definitely not how SKT likes to play. So SKT needs to just pull back, get things back under control again.
Nice flash from xiohu to escape that cocoon.
Mata just got absolutely annihilated right there. And that was just pretty unfortunate. Now this chase through the jungle, I don't think they need to commit as heavily as they did. I think that actually just containing xiohu and denying recall is going to be better because that enables your team to just continue pushing. Mostly because you don't know exactly where Looper was.
I think interesting decision making across the board here. SKT in the end don't get the Baron and the gold lead for them. Only at about 4K at this point in the game, so not insurmountable. But as we mentioned, late game, it gets pretty terrifying to fight the Aurelia Malazahar. I mean, what kind of clock do we think that RNG are on to try to find a lead here?
I mean, honestly, I think that clock probably has already sailed. I mean, they should have been a couple K ahead at like 20 minutes, and the fact that they're a couple K down at 24 is not at all how their comp should be functioning.
I like that you mixed your metaphors there. The clock has already sailed.
Yeah, dude. That's the kind of the game. It's the kind of game it is.
All right. Well,
it's a clock on the boat. All right. What do you? This isn't the 1400s, all right? We're not using sextants and sundials and things like that.
All right, fine. Maybe some unnecessary criticism there, but maybe some necessary criticism of RNG. Unfortunate game from them coming in, some small mistakes. We mostly pin it on the Aurelion Sol, but also just feels like risky maneuvers across the board. SKT, do they just keep going back to this Baron until RNG fall into a trap?
Well, the problem is Faker's actually.
What? Yes? No. Okay, Faker in trouble. mlxg set to fall, but Faker will drop 2. Aggressive pick. xiohu gets stunned up. Stars go away, and xiohu's now set to go down.
Aurelia's coming up from the flank too. She's gonna pop out a Wraith Rush, and there she is, and she's gonna get a cleanup kill.
Kick.
Oh, they
There's
don't
the
see
Tuzi.
Yep, that's probably Baron. It's gonna be really hard for them to contest unless Looper can get some kind of godlike ultimate. Oh, he's not even gonna bother. Going bottom.
Yeah. He's not even going to bother. So that's going to be Baron for SK Telecom. And I was actually just mentioning that Faker was about 2.5 minutes away from Void Staff when you factor in his GPM. But with Baron, he might actually just be able to pick it up. And that's going to be problematic because that's going to be the 3 out of Malazahar, which is basically the Doom power spike.
He pushes the buttons, the little critters come out, and people start dying.
Yep.
Malazahar. So fun and interactive in the late game, right,
champions.
guys? You push the buttons and people die. League of Legends. Yeah, definitely the grim fate for RNG, unfortunately. And you can see, honestly, the sheer amount of CC on this team makes Aurelion Sol feel so weak now that he's started to fall behind. Because every time those stars disappear, he doesn't actually do anything in the fights.
Yeah, and SKT's comp is kind of hard to defend against. I mean, they don't have like great dive or anything, but they can just open up with a lot of poke in terms of the Jhin and just sending the Elise W out. Zyra's really annoying around turrets, and they also have like the split push threat with the Aurelion, so they have a lot of options to try and snowball with this Baron and start mowing down some of these inner turrets.
All right, well, we're starting to see the members of SKT appear. The little bits of the map that we can see from the RNG perspective. You see Zyra, Jhin taking up home in the mid lane, Aurelion on the top side. Faker was pushing out the bottom, but everything else is a question mark. If you're RNG in the situation, where do you prioritize vision? What is the most important thing to kind of stopping SKT from getting anything else?
I wouldn't put double pink ward in the middle of the lane. That's definitely not the optimal situation to ward. I'm not sure what those are doing there.
I think you're being a little critical, Mark.
Maybe. They're just giving Lee Sin some extra targets to W2.
Kennen could TP to it.
Oh no, they cleared both of them.
How?
That's going to, yep, that's the real game changer right there.
Such a good, W target for when they start sieging this turret. You just end up behind them, but now they're gone.
I actually want to point out how SK Telecom just took the Cloud Drake, but they could have recognized that just actually delaying dragons might have actually been better, which would be a little bit oversafe, but honestly you could make the argument that that would be fine given that this is match point. So by not taking the Cloud Drake, it basically means that even if RNG does find some sort of a victory, they're only rewarded with the Cloud Drake.
Oh. Down, knocked out, 1-for-1 trade in the end, however, and a lot of resources burned on the side of RNG, but SKT seem ready for a collapse.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, SKT's all right with that. Not happy, but they're going to trade one turret and get a 1-for-1 in it, as well as keeping the pressure up in the mid lane. So it's hardly, maybe even all 3 if they keep doing this. Yeah, it's they don't care at all that they lost Bang there.
Bang cares. It's a rough game, of course, now stretching towards the 10K gold lead for SKT. And this one feels insurmountable on the side of RNG. mlxg, I think, spending more time running around looking potentially for the kick to get the hero play here. Does have vision of the wolves, knows someone's going to try to start it. Baker.
The thing is even a kick, I mean, it doesn't really do too much. Malazahar does have a lot of excess HP, and RNG does not have the type of damage to delete anyone at this point.
Uzi is running for his life. Looper now sacrificed for the aggressive play there. I mean, do you respect RNG for going in for plays like this, or is there any value in this?
There's absolutely no value. You have to acknowledge when you're professionals how much damage you do deal, and you have to know what sort of fights that you can pick. And at this point, you have to know that no one on SKT is going to be alone. And if you do want to make sure that they're alone, then your wards need to be even more defensive, and you need to be absolutely sure that your pick is in fact a pick, because there can't be any sort of gambles.
I respect going for it, but not at all from the position they're in, I guess. Kind of what Elise is saying, like, they don't actually have burst potential. Like, if you kick someone back, who's like gonna blow the target up before, you know, the rest of the team comes in to protect that guy you went in with? So, you know, if they were running some burst comp and it's like a Syndra mid and Lee Sin goes to that play, like, sure, like, go for those kind of pick plays. But you're Aurelion Sol who's behind, an Ezreal who's behind, a Kennen who's behind. Like, you don't have like insta-give potential.
Well, gentlemen, as one-sided games usually go, and a shame to see a quarterfinal series end in such a one-sided game, although mlxg may look to change that. Blank.
I think he's just trying to prove he can actually insect at this point.
You're so rude. You're so cruel, MarkZ. With people with feelings.
Oh, wow.
Feelings
they don't
that
even
may
get
not
blanked.
matter in the face of this curtain call. How many people are going to die for this? Looks
Everyone.
Like
It's going to be a clean ace. Mata's running for his life. Not going to happen.
Well,
one desperate RNG. Twitter questions, because this game is swiftly on the way out. Let's get Patrick Fritz's, because I like this one. It's pretty general. Sorry to anyone else who missed it, though. And at PatrickFritz67 asks, at learning the game, should I stick to 2 or 3 champions or always try to pick good matchups? Notice I did not take a question from this game, as it's pretty cut and dry exactly what happened.
when you're trying to get better, it's always better to condense your champion pool and play a few champions. Counter picks don't really exist, because even if you are in a counter pick, you probably don't know why.
Or you can't play it correctly.
Or you can't play it correctly, so that doesn't really matter. Just play a few champions and focus on improving them, and stick to playing 2 to 3 lanes.
There you go. 2 to 3 lanes.
2 to 3 champions.
RNG played all 5. It did not work out for them. 5 roles, that is, not 5 lanes. There's only 3 of those. Of course, this was a grim series, and I don't want to take anything away from SKT, because they dominated this and are very much in tournament shape. This is, of course, still a World Series, so I think we got to give the credits due. RNG did put up a decent fight, but now, looking ahead, who can take down SKT?
I mean, we've only seen 2 of the quarterfinals so far, so you're obviously looking at Samsung Galaxy. They looked really clean in their play. They were obviously a step ahead of C9 in terms of mechanical skill, and C9, you know, they got a small lead on SKT at certain points, so maybe you're looking at that as a sign that Samsung's strong relative to SKT, but I think that's maybe looking a little bit too much into it. Obviously, the other Korean team in ROX is one to look at, and then not too convinced on H2K or ANX.
Why not?
Why not?
You know,
why can't you? Why doesn't Europe have a chance? Why doesn't the CIS region have a chance?
Looking at ANX's games, man, that first week was kind of crazy, the amount of Barons that they just snuck, as well as the fact that when they did have leads, they couldn't control Barons. They had like the inverse Baron going on, where they get Barons they shouldn't, but lose ones they should, which to me is not the hallmark of success.
That's fair. I think that's a fair criticism of ANX. We'll have to see if that comes out in their matchup on Sunday. Of course, our matchup tomorrow will be EDG versus ROX, and the winner of that will move on to face SKT, but this feels like a pretty heavy task to beat SKT, because Game 1, they looked out of shapes, but even in this Game 4, when RNG found a lead, it just feels like SKT completely out-executed.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that SKT does better than a lot of teams is their control in terms of how they play. They almost never make a mistake where you're left scratching your head like, man, what were they thinking there? There's times where they get outplayed or someone might make a good play on them, but there's almost never a head-scratching moment, which is really important, because at this level of play, you can't afford to make your own mistakes when the other team is good as well.
Interesting to see, too, of course, because that one top lane play was really the only time we saw them truly out-executed. Of course, just some phenomenal play coming in from mlxg to end the series. You know, some decent play overall from him, but what do we still feel like Blank and Bengi are the notable weak point on this SKT roster? If you have to play it against SKT, is that the point that you attack? How do you play it around SKT at this stage?
Well, I feel like Blank wasn't really doing anything early on that game until that counter gank in mid, but that was via RNG just making a very bad play. So they went for something they never should have been going for, and Blank was able to salvage it. But for the most part, he was almost just farming really a lot on Elise. So I think that their champion pool and how they play the jungle definitely is still the weak point. And when SK Telecom does fall behind, there is still that tendency that Faker does just go overly aggressive, and then he starts feeding. So
gotta respect the honesty.
Yeah, they're gonna have to worry though when they do start to go up against more competent teams, because RNG is they literally live up to their name. It is RNG.
Yeah. I was hoping I
So-
could make a joke about that in a positive way, but unfortunately I cannot. Unfortunately, that name is purely negative at this point in time. As the game one, it felt good, but even the execution, even the closeout there coming in from RNG wasn't clean. It was still a very back and forth game.
No, it almost felt like it heavily relied on the RNG factor of the Dragons, where they got the double Mountain Drake, and then they stalled out for so long, and then finally they're like, hey, SKT's finally not around, and we burned Baron down really quickly. Let's go get that. So it didn't feel like they ever just destroy you around Baron the way SKT does, where it's like face check us, face check us, face check us.
I mean, we
And now
witnessed
we have
that in
Baron.
that game. It's just face check, please. You walk in, Mata dies immediately. Yes, you get a kill back on Faker, but the rest of the map just starts to fall apart. And I think one of the perks of the Fog of War stream is you get to watch how hard it is to play around Baron as a professional team. Because in solo queue, it's like face check a Baron, okay, on to the next game. But in competitive play, there's so much riding on that, and it feels like, I mean, when you're playing up against a face checking a Baron, what do you think is the decision-making process there? Is it just like, I have to accept that we're going to take this 50-50 shot, that they're either waiting in the brush to kill me, or is it just like, once you're in that situation, there is no right answer and you just have to take a risk?
It's a lot of resource management. So you should have a couple like face checking abilities, like often Ezreal ult is one that you'll often see, or Jhin has a couple abilities. There's usually a couple champions with abilities that you can kind of shoot in and check with. You have your blue trinkets, and you have your pre-warding before you get into that situation. So it's really about SKT, or well, whoever's controlling the Baron, like kind of choking those resources out of you, and then finally you have to face check. And that's what SKT does so well, is that they just keep forcing those outs, and then eventually you have to face check it. And then they're there either chunking you or the Baron's going away.
Yeah, obviously just an incredibly oppressive way to play. We'll hope to see the same clean execution from our teams in tomorrow's game, but that is going to do it for us here today on the Player Experience stream. Tune in tomorrow when Matt and Kiwi Kid are on hand to break down 5 fresh takes on the matches between Rocks, Tigers, and Edward Gaming. If we go to 5 games, it may just be 3, maybe 4. We'll feature some more single-team vision discussions alongside dives to the jungle, top lane, and bottom lane. Now, for everybody who helped bring you the Player Experience stream, thank you for watching, and we'll send you back to the main stream for an interview with SKT's Faker to close out the day.